I am here with Jennifer Merschdorf, and it's going to be a real pleasure to hear her survival story. Jennifer, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And who's this little rascal right
This
here?
is Preston Maxwell. He is part of my story, so I thought he'd be appropriate to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we're all anxious to hear the story, so please tell us more.
So my story started in 2010 and started with a phone call from my mother in January. And a phone call I was not expecting, and that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer.
And how old was Mom, Jen?
Mom was 66.
Okay.
66. No cancer in our family. To this day, it's still been the worst news I've ever heard. I assumed that she had 5 seconds to live, and I hadn't been in a hospital since I've been born. So
Yep.
the idea was sort of mind-blowing. She lives in California, I live in New York City, and began to dance and flying back and forth. I wasn't gonna miss any of it, and start educating and learning. My father, my brother, and I all had to learn what a lymph node was, and just the whole world.
All the options.
The language of
right.
cancer.
And then you got to the point where you realized that this wasn't going to be a major fatality right away.
Oh, no, that took a long time to get there.
I understand, because the initial fear that everybody goes through is really critical.
It is.
And so one of my mantras is time is our friend. Because with that, we really want to slow things down.
I couldn't agree more.
And educate people and get them empowered. if you will.
Right. And that's, I wish that was out there more.
Yeah.
Because I think there's such a sense of you have to do it right now.
Yes.
And maybe in some cases you do. I'm not going to say that, but
rarely, but
there is that
correct.
sense.
Absolutely, there's that sense. You
And
bet.
I think that I remember my mother's, she had a lumpectomy first. She ended up doing a lumpectomy, she then did chemo, and then she did a mastectomy, single mastectomy. And I remember during her lumpectomy, when she came out, the doctor came out and said she was fine. I broke down and crying, almost to the floor. I thought she was going to die.
Sure, of course.
I mean, so that was the perspective.
Yep, so now we fast forward.
Forward
from
because
that.
the only thing I had going for me was that young women don't get breast cancer.
Right.
Right.
Right?
So I went out for her mastectomy surgery in the end of July and was diagnosed 2 weeks later.
Good grief.
Yes, probably for me, I always tell people that I felt like I cheated a little. I was already in it. I had already done the research. I already knew what was what. I understood all these different things. So in that way, I think I cheated. But I had to tell my mom.
Wow.
And
that must have been hard to your mom.
That was actually she is the most amazing woman. She changed instantly because she's a mom.
Sure.
And so she went from my disease to my daughter needs me.
Right.
And she got on a plane, and 2 weeks later she was in New York City and she didn't leave for months.
Okay.
So she really moved her focus to me.
And as you know, women, and so if you might share with people, how old were you when you were
36 years old.
36 years old. So the standard in the 36-year-old, despite your family history or with your family history, is to do gene testing.
That's correct.
And so you've been tested for BRCA1
I
and
have.
2.
A negative.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Very good.
Yep.
People ask me all the time, gee, Dr. Harness, what's the cause of breast cancer? I said, if I could answer that question, I'd win a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, right?
in medicine.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
No
So
kidding.
fast forward now, taking these two diagnoses
Yeah.
into your current role, and tell everyone about your organization
sure.
and what you do at your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So young women diagnosed with breast cancer. Basically, there is a sense out there that you just got to throw the book at them, chemo them up. We don't know what to do. It's really aggressive. It's not normal.
Yep.
And so I was being treated at NYU, and I have an amazing doctor, and she does believe in slowing down a minute.
Yep.
And so actually I did an oncotype test, and it changed everything for me.
And if you don't mind sharing, what were your results?
My results were that chemo was going to make my hair fall out and be really sick.
Okay.
But removing the estrogen from my body was really how we were going to
All right.
fight
So
this
you
battle.
ended up with a high-risk oncotype score that said, hey, you really do need chemotherapy.
No, opposite.
Oh, the opposite.
No chemo.
No chemo, so you had a low-risk score.
Right. It was like 2. or something,
Fantastic.
3 or something.
All right, fantastic.
So, well, it's right, so that's fantastic.
And the important point is that I think historically we've thought that in young women, everyone's going to get chemotherapy.
That's right. That's exactly
and
right.
so genomic profiling then is really important.
It is.
Even in our younger patients.
It is. It's critical.
Okay.
And it's interesting because there's not a lot of it happening yet.
Correct.
So I even found myself suddenly in a place that there wasn't a lot of people like me.
Yep.
I had already found the Young Survival Coalition, and which is an organization that supports just young women with breast cancer.
Yep.
In New York City where I lived, and had my survivor girlfriends, and they were all very confused. You're not doing chemo?
Right.
And we all do chemo.
Right. You're not a member of the club yet.
Right?
You haven't had chemo. You're not a member of the club.
Exactly. So that was a little tough.
Good for you.
So I was thrown into medically induced menopause overnight. I would say could sometimes be maybe a little tougher than chemo.
Well, it is, but the bottom line here is among younger women, one size does not fit all.
That's true.
And that they really need to be in a multidisciplinary setting like you were.
Absolutely.
And they need to know what their options are, and that, again, one size does not fit all.
That's true.
Now, fast forward from that as to becoming the CEO of your organization.
Right, absolutely. So they, why I brought up the Oncotype test was that evening when I had sat down with my oncologist, we decided to do this. I was not doing chemo. I prepared, I already cut my hair, because I just done it with my mom. I knew, I'm like, we got to get ready for this. I'm not going to be able to work, I'm not going to be able to do anything. So I left feeling like, wow, I just got my life back. And that evening, YSC posted the position for the CEO. And I think there was just enough energy that I thought, I know I can do that.
Okay.
I've been working in this field forever.
Right.
So 9 months from diagnosis date, I became YSC CEO.
Okay.
Third CEO.
Okay.
But what is very unique is I am still in treatment, but at the time, really still in treatment. I'm part of the constituency. I'm MBA business trained and come from an incredible nonprofit background. So the small organization, it was just the perfect fit.
Good for you. Now, how do people find out about your organization? As I've shared with you, I've had the pleasure of meeting some of your volunteers out in California where I am.
Yep.
How do people find out more about your organization?
Oh, great. Thank you for asking. Youngsurvival.org is the website.
Youngsurvival.org. Okay.
We're also certainly on Facebook, on Twitter,
Sure.
all the important places where there's important conversations happening. I think those are the great places to start. Certainly survivors. The goal is that we want to connect you to other survivors, other young survivors, whether it's in person, whether it's on the internet in our bulletin board space, or one-on-one, which a lot of young survivors really would like also.
And there's lots of resources and material available.
Tons.
And you've got volunteers all across the country.
Yes, absolutely. And part of what we do is we translate the world of breast cancer from older to younger.
Very good.
And my mom and I always talk about that because
Okay.
it's certainly different for her than it is for me.
All right. Jennifer, it's been a real pleasure having you with me today.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful, heartwarming story, and the translation from older to younger is really important.
I'm a breast cancer survivor,
I am a breast cancer survivor.
I am a breast cancer survivor.
and I want every woman to know
About personalized breast cancer treatment.
and the genomic test.
A test that helps guide a woman and her doctor.
To the best treatment options for her.
Pass it on.